Solidarity Media, the Solidarity Fund Media Update. My name is Andile Kumalo. I am going to be hosting you for the rest of the session. Thanks for making the time. I know that everybody is busy and it's that time of the year when lots of priorities are kind of ahead of us, so we appreciate your time. Warm welcome to all the media, both local and coming from abroad. Your interest in the activities of the Solidarity Fund is much appreciated. The reason why we are here is to provide an update in the interest of accountability and transparency. The fund regularly provides such updates on the work of its stakeholders and of course the public. So we provide these regular updates on our website, which we encourage you to visit as often as you can. But if you want to contact us for any media queries, including requests for interviews, please email media@solidarityfund.co.za. That's media@solidarityfund.co.za, and we'll take your queries and escalate them to the media team so that we can arrange those interviews for you. With that, I'd like to introduce you to our panel. We have a very high-powered delegation from the fund to present the media update. And after, of course, all the presentations, we will be opening up everything for questions. Please feel free to send your questions while the presentations are going, and I will sift through those and I will direct them or to the relevant panelists. If there is somebody specific that you want to answer the question, please do specify who is it that you'd like to answer the questions. In fact, on that note, let me tell you who we have speaking and also on the panel. Chairperson of the Solidarity Fund, Ms. Gloria Serobe, will be first up. She'll be making some opening remarks, and she'll be followed by the Chief Executive Officer of the Solidarity Fund, Nomkhita Nqweni. And after the CEO's address and a wrap up from the chairperson, we will then go straight into the Q&A session. Now, in this Q&A session, we've brought on the various leads of the different functionalities or functionaries in the Solidarity Fund. We will have Ms. Wendy Klo, the Executive Head of the Humanitarian and Behavioral Change Pillar. We've got Johnny Broomberg, who is the lead for health, and he's assisted by Jessica Standish-White. And we also have Paul Bondi, the lead for fundraising. So that will be the full panel. You will have Gloria Serobe, the chairperson, Nomkhita Nqweni, the CEO, and Wendy Klo, the lead on humanitarian and behavioral change, and Johnny Broomberg, the lead for health, assisted by Jessica Standish-White, and also Paul Bondi, the fundraising lead. As I've already mentioned, after the CEO's presentation and the wrap from the chairperson, we will open up for questions. Please send your questions on the chat facility that's below. If you want to direct them to a specific person, please let me know so that I can fire away those questions to the relevant people. At the end of our session, which we are targeting 12 o'clock, we will be distributing a media release with the details of today's briefing, which you'll be able to use. So there's no need for furious note-taking, but you're more than, you can be comfortable that you will get that media pack at the end. Without any further ado, I'd like to now hand over to the chairperson of the Solidarity Fund, Ms. Gloria Serobe.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you once again for joining us for this update on the activities of the fund. On the 23rd of this month, the fund will be 6 months old, and that's almost 6 months since the COVID-19 pandemic became a daily reality in the lives of us all. In 6 months, we have seen the country rally together, from businesses, from government, from NGOs and individuals. We have seen the country's largest enterprises donate billions to help South Africans, and we have seen individuals start feeding schemes with the money in their pockets. The 23rd is also the day before Heritage Day, and as we mark Heritage Month, it seems right to celebrate that particular part of our heritage. Our kindness as a nation and our ability to come together to work for the good of all. At 6 months old, the fund has had both challenges and successes. While we are hopeful that as the curve continues to flatten, we will be able to start seeing our way out of this crisis. We know that our job is not over yet. The Solidarity Fund is committed to continuing our work of bringing relief, support, and information to South Africans in this time of crisis. And we will continue to do so with full transparency and accountability. We understand the country has questions and they deserve answers, and that is what today is all about. And so without further ado, I'll hand you over to Nomkhita Ngweni, our CEO, to update you on the work we've done and are still doing. Over to you, Nomkhita.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Gloria. And as you said, we do thank everybody for making the time to attend this briefing today. As Gloria pointed out, this month is Heritage Month. And as a nation that is facing one of its biggest trials in decades, unity and respect for every aspect of our wonderful culture and for one another is now more important than ever before. Through unity, compassion, and determination, we can work to conquer the virus, aid those needing immediate relief, and importantly, rebuild our economy in the months and years ahead. When the Solidarity Fund was set up 6 months ago, it was designed to be a rapid and immediate response vehicle to counter the health effects of the pandemic and the humanitarian and social effects of the lockdown. Our work, as our chairman has just said, is not done, and we will continue to make measurable positive impact across our key interventions of health, humanitarian relief, and building social solidarity. At our last press update, which was about a month ago, we spoke in detail about our health interventions, and today we will be sharing updated numbers on those, but in this briefing, we are largely going to focus primarily on our humanitarian interventions and importantly, our behavioral change campaign. To date, the fund has made a significant impact by working to procure and provide critical medical equipment and PPE for healthcare workers, as well as extending testing capacity. We have also concluded the first phase of our food relief program, and the second phase is about to commence. A quick look at the numbers across all the 3 pillars of our work show that in support of our health initiatives, we were able to procure just over 41 million units of PPE and have commissioned the local manufacturing of 20,000 non-invasive ventilators, of which 4,000 have already been delivered and distributed to date. In expanding the country's testing capability, we supported the NHLS with 1.2 million reagent and extraction kits. This supported the NHLS's capacity to be able to perform up to 45,000 tests a day at the peak of the pandemic. At the last briefing, we committed to supporting the hotspot provinces of Gauteng, Western Cape, and Eastern Cape with the procurement of critical medical equipment. This equipment is currently in the process of being deployed. Our humanitarian interventions have seen us disperse food parcels to 280,000 households, with the second phase involving the disbursement of food vouchers to a further 135,000 households, which includes unemployed young people, expectant mothers, women-led households, and foreign nationals who are not classified as asylum seekers or refugees in terms of the South Africa's Immigration Act. The fund always seeks to create a balance of immediate relief efforts, however balanced with long-term sustainable interventions. To this end, the fund has allocated 100 million for a once-off input voucher, agriculture voucher, to be dispersed to 47,000 rural households, 66% of which will be largely women-headed households. These farming input vouchers are a mechanism to assist subsistence-focused smallholder and household farmers who have lost income from a combination of sources during the COVID-19 restrictions. Subsistence farmers who are predominantly rural play a critical role in household food security. Approximately 75% of these farmers engage in agriculture to provide extra or supplementary food to their households. We firmly believe that these farming input vouchers can prevent households from being pushed into the poverty trap while being provided with direct access to food. The vouchers will be able to be redeemed for farming inputs at selected suppliers. These suppliers will be sourced from two avenues. The first is the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, who have a list of suppliers who participated in their COVID-19 Disaster Agriculture Support Fund. And secondly, through the Agricultural Business Chamber of South Africa. To ensure compliance and also secure against fraud and abuse, there will be controls at different stages of this voucher process. Loosely, these will include the authorization of beneficiary identification personnel, automated cross-checking of selected registration inputs, formal signing off on final beneficiary lists by principals of the identified beneficiary partners, one-time PIN process for voucher redemption, user and product setup protocols for input suppliers, and sales and voucher redemption reconciliation of the ultimate input suppliers. Now, last month was Women's Month, and rightly there was a large focus on gender-based violence. As a country, we are not just facing the pandemic of COVID-19, but we are also seeing a tragic escalation of the gender-based violence scourge, which has become the ugly twin sister of this pandemic. Given the reported upsurge in cases of gender-based violence in South Africa, and as a result of the COVID-19 lockdown, GBV has been identified as one of the areas requiring urgent attention under the Solidarity Fund's humanitarian workstream, which is led by Wendy Klo. The Solidarity Fund is determined to bring relief to the women and children of South Africa and make a meaningful impact in ensuring that the victims of gender-based violence have access to support and that the underlying structural causes of abuse are addressed. To that end, we have to date disbursed 17 million Rand in our first intervention. And today we are glad to announce the second intervention of 75 million, which will go towards assisting approximately 360 local community organizations that offer critical services to women and children affected by gender-based violence. The beneficiary organizations will be selected across the ecosystem of GBV organizations and include those working in prevention, response, and the judicial system. Determining who will ultimately become beneficiaries is a task in itself. To understand the priority of needs and direct the efforts to maximize impact, the Solidarity Fund consulted widely with key stakeholders in the GBV space to determine the best course of action. The key stakeholders were from the Interim Steering Committee on Gender-Based Violence, the Department of Women, Youth, and Persons with Disabilities, civil society organizations, international organizations, leading researchers and practitioners in the women and children and access to justice sectors, as well as digital social justice accelerators. This process involved extensive one-on-one consultations with stakeholders to assess options available for providing support. Thereafter, a technical advisory group was convened to conduct 2 workshops to evaluate all the potential intervention options and to prioritize interventions that are able to bring about sustained impact. And importantly, those actions that can be actioned immediately and that meet the needs of the victims. The intervention is currently under a comprehensive design and planning process to maximize the reach of beneficiaries and ensure complete transparency in allocating funding to these beneficiaries. Our third pillar of work is behavioral change. This is a crucial component of work that we do, as it is aimed at empowering individuals to look after their own safety through education and information. To achieve our goals, we continue to work with civil society and community constituencies to amplify our behavioral change campaign and ensure maximum reach and impact. For example, we have partnered with traditional leaders and provided them with the tools that include loud hailers to spread accurate information within their rural communities. Being able to leverage their good standing in these communities allows us to have maximum impact because of the trust and understanding that exists in that ecosystem. We have partnered with business in the Return to Work campaign to develop business protocols, labor training material across various sectors and subsectors, and the Return to Work website, which has to date gained just over 100,000 unique visitors. And we have worked with faith-based leaders to create awareness and educate individuals and church bodies on COVID best practice and educational information. We have also funded a national radio campaign to provide school managers and teachers with reliable, relevant information to influence good health and safety practices as schools have steadily opened up. And we have used radio to share COVID educational content and also have engaged with the listeners to encourage citizen behavior responses. In total, just over 33.9 million citizens in our country have been reached through all of our active citizen and behavioral change campaigns. As our country slowly starts to open up, there is a very real risk that society's previous adherence to the healthy behaviors such as social distancing, limited gathering, and hand washing will begin to lessen. It is important to remember that whilst the threat may be seen to be diminishing, the virus itself is not gone. Our behavior change initiatives are as important now as they were ever before. At the Solidarity Fund, we are acutely aware of the immense responsibility we hold in helping our country to respond effectively to this current crisis. We also know that to operate effectively, earning and keeping the trust of all South Africans, from business to stakeholders to individuals, it is of vital importance. We answer to the public, and we are committed to transparency in all that we do. Within the first 6 weeks of its establishment, formal structures, including an independent board subcommittees, and reporting lines were established within the fund. Since then, we have held media engagements, such as this one, on an average once a month. We are, however, aware that more can be done. To this end, we have undertaken to increase our updates with media, with stakeholders, and on our website. Currently, we are engaging in ongoing donor feedback roundtables or a roadshow report back to our donors, where we are discussing our projects and also getting valuable impact and feedback from our donors. And we will also issue a fortnightly stakeholder newsletter, as well as ad hoc updates as required. We are committed to increasing our media engagements to every 2 weeks if required, and also if attendance is good, and using them as an opportunity to highlight the work being done and answer any questions or concerns the media and public may have. We will also issue continuous media alerts when important decisions or disbursements are made, as we have done during the duration of the fund. We are also making changes to our website, which will in the near future be more reflective of the work we are currently involved in. We will regularly post reports, and I'm introducing a monthly podcast with updates. We will also be increasing our social media activity to ensure that the public is regularly informed on a daily basis on the workings of the fund. Finally, the fund will be issuing 6 reports by the end of September. 4 of these reports will be from the health stream, which is led by Dr. Johnny Broomberg, 1 from the humanitarian stream, and the other in the behavioral stream, led by Wendy Klo. As we started evolving into a more advanced phase of this pandemic, the initiatives and interventions that we undertake, likewise, must also evolve. For example, as the need, for example, for a PPE diminishes, it means that therefore our procurement of PPEs will also be coming to an end. One thing hasn't changed, however, and that is our commitment to delivering the critical assistance and humanitarian support to our health workers and also all our fellow South Africans. And with that, Gloria, let me hand back over to you to help us in conclusion, and then we can go into the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nomkhita and the team, for your continuing efforts to make a real impact in our fight to respond to the pandemic and its effects. 6 months ago, as a country, we rallied together, not knowing exactly what to expect and how the pandemic would affect us all. We have all faced challenges, personally and as a society. The gratitude we have at the fund feel to all South Africans for their support of the fund is immeasurable. Through them and for them, we have stood together in solidarity and augmented a countrywide response to an unprecedented crisis. That's a true legacy of the Solidarity Fund and the meaning of the Heritage Month. I will now hand over to you, Andile, and to open to the floor for any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Appreciate that. Thank you also, CEO, for the presentation. We've got one question so far. I would encourage my colleagues in the media to please send any more questions they have. I've got a few of my own as well that I'll send to you. And once we've covered all the questions that have come up, I think we can wrap up the press update. Sane Dlamini from Polity and Engineering News has a question around, I guess, the legacy of the Solidarity Fund. He's asking, is there a plan for the Solidarity Fund to continue this wonderful work post-COVID-19? Nomkita, Chairperson, maybe you'd like to take those.
I smile and I look at my chairperson, Andile. I think she would like to answer this one.
Well, I think that is quite flattering, I must say, because we were quite all anxious at the beginning as to whether we would be able to move South Africans from the leap of faith, because people who supported us, they were really a leap of faith. And we wanted to be in a position 5 months later, at least, to say that you were right to trust that we'll do the right things and that all your money will go to where it's supposed to go. Which is ultimately the patient in hospital or the victim of a gender-based violence or those who are subjected to food crisis and so on. We have done that and we appreciate the compliments. As for the question about can we continue with this work, it's a team discussion, mindful though that the fund itself was announced by the president of the country in March. And so the conclusion of what happens with the fund, together with what we're doing here and the donors and what South Africans expect, will determine where that goes. But right now, I've got my team here, I've got my CEO here. They can't sleep, they're not sleeping. And the reason we could do this, I just need to emphasize saying, is because it's a daily kind of meeting at 7 a.m. It's a weekly meeting of the board, it's a weekly meeting of the subcommittees of the board. It's the audit committees and all of that to make sure that while we're dealing with the crisis, we are not dropping standards on the issue of corporate governance, the segregation of duties, and we cannot hide behind the fact that this was a crisis, it was an emergency. We had to squeeze everything so that all the approval processes are actually met within that kind of pressed time. So behind what you see is a lot of stress in the system in terms of people just working 24/7. But I will leave it to the team. I will be guided by the team. I'll be guided by the country as well in terms of what next. But thank you for the compliments.
Thank you, Chair. And maybe just to segue to you, Nomkita, from an operational level, Chairperson has already spoken about the issues of governance and how you've made that a priority. You know, we as a South African public are inundated with stories of corruption, particularly around protective equipment in the past few weeks and months. How, at a practical level, are you, or have you been able to ensure that you know, you keep the highest levels of governance and you ensure that the monies that have been donated by so many South Africans that have shown a really giving spirit actually has the intended impact?
Angela, I think, you know, as the chairperson has already kind of alluded, it's really been an effort and the unrelenting pursuit of executing with excellence because the trust, you know, that was bestowed on us and the generosity of South Africans. I mean, the fund has attracted more than 300,000 individual South Africans, in addition to corporates, you know, who have donated to the fund. And therefore, it was quite important to us from an operational perspective that we ensure that, like in any business, you would have, you know, clear processes and protocols that are designed and controls within that are effective, and that we are able to measure and stress test, you know, those controls. If I were to give you an example, I mean, you talk about the procurement of PPEs, which is something that obviously has been quite topical as we've read, you know, in the press and the media. In our procurement process, we actually partnered with the Business for South Africa procurement platform, which was a platform that was really created to help in providing a scalable procurement platform that really just pulled together all the expertise and resources, particularly of our companies in the healthcare sector. So, you know, big companies like Aspen, GSK, etc., who had those expertise. And so effectively people were deployed onto this health procurement platform that effectively used quite a detailed process in terms of making decisions as to, firstly, working with the Department of Health in understanding what are the commodities that they require, because PPE is vast, so different commodities would be needed at different points in time. So there was a demand and supply model that was developed. And also, most importantly, companies were able to register their businesses on the platform and indicate what kind of services that they would be able to potentially provide, and also at what cost. And that enabled us to be able to do price benchmarking, because different companies also, were priced differently. And importantly, as part of that process, if then, let's assume that, you were then chosen as a potential supplier, you needed to also provide the requisite registration and accreditation of your product, because a lot of these healthcare products require SAPRA accreditation. And also, once then the product has been ordered, then there's quality assurance and vetting from the South African Bureau of Standards. So, for example, through this quality assurance process, we were able to pick up that a particular consignment of goods that we had ordered was not meeting the quality standards. And so it was important to make sure that in protecting the healthcare workers in the front line, that defective products were not being released, because that would actually create a lot of risk. And so it's through these quality assurance processes that we were able to pick up the defective goods and actually have worked with that supplier to ensure that the right quality SABS approved products are actually replaced. And so I've taken a bit of a long route to explain, because we think that it's quite important for South Africans to understand the detail of the processes that go into each and every aspect of what we do, and how we have tried to safeguard and ensure that we are putting controls along the way. And of course, we've got our board subcommittees that we are accountable to. Just after this briefing, we are going to our audit risk committee, where again, we're continuously accounting for the work that we are doing.
Right,
so,
right.
So hopefully that gives a lot of color, Andile, into the processes, particularly procurement.
Absolutely, it does. And it tells everybody listening that it is possible, right? It is possible to actually do the right thing. And there's no need for us to drop the ball when it comes to greed and corruption. Wendy, let me come to you, because the big update from today is the increased spend on your gender-based violence initiatives. 17 million first tranche, this time is 75 million. Please give us some more detail in terms of where that money would go, into what kind of initiatives. Because certainly as a man, I feel like you need to spend more time and energy teaching my people on how to behave.
Thanks, Andile. Yes, so our first intervention was about perhaps 2 months ago, and that's the 17 million rand intervention. And that went really to national organizations, or organizations that had a national reach, and were able to help women and children affected by gender-based violence through shelters, through care centers, but also to alleviate the pressure that the command center was experiencing as a result of the high volume of calls that they were receiving during the sort of heightened lockdown. The 75 million rand is complementary to that, and that is really intended to go to locally based organizations that do the real hard work of assisting women and children who are affected by gender-based violence. And it's really about understanding the environment that we're operating in, and supporting them to continue to be able to provide those services. And you're quite right. The way we've looked at it is not to say that we will only look at victims or once something has happened to a woman or a child, but we've said that we'll look at it from an ecosystem perspective. So the funding is going to go towards organizations across the entire ecosystem that look at preventative measures, which include, obviously, the work that needs to be done with the men of South Africa in terms of educating, creating awareness, and creating shame about gender-based violence. Also to organizations that offer response mechanisms, your shelters, your care centers, your vehicle type of response organizations that can help women and children that find themselves in those circumstances. But also understanding that once you are a victim, you have to go through the judicial system. And there's a lot that happens there that tends to fail women. And really, it's about assisting those organizations as well to give them the capacity to be able to assist speedily, but also to assist those victims who have been so dehumanized from the experience and aren't quite able to articulate themselves to be able to and to access and have the full might of the judicial system at their disposal. So that's really the second part, with obviously a substantial investment of 75 million rand.
Wendy, how does the selection process work? With this allocation, have you already decided which initiatives will be supported, or perhaps other initiatives can still approach the fund?
Yeah, so we haven't decided yet. As Nomkita said in her presentation, we are still designing the process. We're still working behind the scenes to tie up contractual obligations with implementation partners, with selection panels in all manner. However, this process is actually going to be very open. We're actually going to call for applications from those organizations.
Wow.
So we're saying to South Africa, if you operate in the gender-based violence sector, if you have a service that is required, that has been impacted by COVID, here's an opportunity for you to apply for funding. And we've separated the funding into two buckets. The first bucket is really for your small, locally based community organizations. And of that 75 million rand, we're going to allocate about 53 million rand. And there's potentially going to be an application from 50,000 rand up to a ceiling of perhaps 250,000 rand to get as many organizations as possible. And then the second bucket will be less, and that will be about 18 million rand that is targeted to your bigger organizations that can have a systemic impact in terms of how we approach and solve for gender-based violence in our country. So, but in all, it will be an open application for companies to come and apply for the funding.
Thanks for that, Wendy. That's really encouraging news and great news. By the way, my colleagues from the media, those who've joined us this morning, thanks again for giving us your time. Please feel free to drop any questions you have on the chat group. Please drop any questions. I've so far had one from Sane, who came from Polity and Engineering News. This platform is for you, where this media update is for you, so please do throw in your questions as well. I'd like to move on to Jonathan Broomberg, who is settled now and hopefully can take a question or two. Jonathan, you lead the health side of things. Obviously, this pandemic has now gone to the stage where it's at, and Nomkita was mentioning that things like procurement of PPE will slow down now, and maybe the fund will start looking at other priorities. What happens now? You know, where does the fund kind of move its focus, and what happens given where the pandemic is right now in South Africa? Where is the attention going to be falling into?
Thanks, Sanila. It's a great question. And, you know, I think that the most important point to make is the fund has stepped in very quickly on critical areas of the health response at the time that those were needed. So you and Nomkita have mentioned PPE. What we haven't mentioned, which I'll mention briefly, is the fund also put significant financial support for testing, supporting the National Health Laboratory Service and a number of academic laboratories to support the national testing effort. That requirement has also come down very significantly now. Thirdly, significant support for the acquisition of ventilators, 20,000 locally produced ventilators, many of which are already being delivered, and importing high-tech ventilators as well. And then finally, just over 400 million on critical medical equipment in a number of the large public hospitals across the country to support that effort. So that's what's being done, Andila. In terms of what comes next, there is still a war chest available to the fund of unallocated funding. And we are really watching the environment very carefully. One allocation has been made. You may have, and the audience may have heard the Minister of Health in the last couple of days talk about a national study that is being done to understand how many people in our population have been infected. That study is being funded by the Solidarity Fund. We're very pleased to say. And then we're really keeping a very careful watching brief on what new needs may arise in the health space. For example, there may be a second wave. We hope it will be small, but so we might need to step back into the PPE or the testing space. We all hope and pray a vaccination program will be available sometime, either early next year, more or less. We're not clear, but the fund may be able to support the government with elements of that. And so there are a number of other areas, Andile, that we're looking at. It's hard to predict them accurately now. And I think our best approach is to watch and wait, but be able to respond very quickly to any new needs that arise. Thanks, Andile.
Thank you so much. Well, guys, I mean, it's pretty obvious that we are indebted to you guys as just the General Republic of South Africa for your hard work. I do have another question from Rebecca Davis. She's from the Daily Maverick. It's a financial one, so I guess it could be between the CEO. It could also be between the chairperson and maybe the fundraising lead as well. Paul, feel free to jump in. She's asking, the latest PPE report includes a high level of financial detail regarding suppliers, which is fantastic, but there are still calls for more detailed and regular financial reports. Are there any plans in this regard?
Okay, thank you, Andile. I think that I will take that one, if that's okay. And I think my colleagues can also supplement. I think as we said, in the main presentation, we are committed to transparency and continuous updating. So as we have indicated, and as Jonathan has also indicated, the procurement of PPEs is an ongoing process, right? So, whilst we may have, in the report that is currently published, provided detail as at, let's call it as at the end of July, as at the end of August, now we are updating that same report with the latest information, which will be as at the end of August. So there is a continuous updating because we are procuring from new suppliers, etc., etc. But I can help Rebecca in kind of giving her sense as just to where we are in terms of the numbers, in terms of the procurement of PPEs at this point. As Johnny has indicated, we've spent quite a considerable, large, resource allocation towards the health sector. And of the 2.4 billion rand that the fund has allocated to various projects, 1.9 billion of that actually has been in the health space. As Johnny has now rightfully described the various areas of interventions. And obviously we had to create the impact there at scale. And about just about 900 million of that has been in the acquisition of PPE directly for the Department of Health, for them to be able to support the 9 provinces accordingly, and also with the DG Murray Trust to be able to assist community healthcare workers, because there are also people that are serving our communities, particularly our rural communities, that needed to also have this protective equipment. So of that 900 odd million, we've already spent 858 million in terms of a PPE, and 768 of that has been for the Department of Health, and about 90 million to the DG with the community healthcare workers. And so the detail as it relates to the suppliers, what commodities that were ordered from them, and therefore what amount, is part of the update that I think will be on the website actually by the end of this week. And we are continuously providing reports, as I mentioned in my address, and we are planning to have 6 more reports published on the website by the end of September. And maybe to characterize this and to help Rebecca and also South Africans understand, is that a lot of these projects are in execution. And so to be able to do your reporting, you need to be able to also start attributing impact. And you can only do that when you have actually completed, the full project, and then you can actually provide the report. So which is why there is a bit of a lag in terms of the reports. And then secondly, we are also going to be producing an impact report, which is almost like your integrated type of report. We are going to produce that in the middle of October, and then obviously at the end of our financial year. So almost trying to adopt the good practices of governance that we see in business, where you have your interim integrated report and then you have your final financial year integrated report. So that is the runway that Rebecca and colleagues can anticipate as being what it is that they will see. And absolutely, these reports will cover all the aspects of our work as we have defined in the briefing. Thank you, Andy.
I think that's a very comprehensive response. Thank you for the question, Rebecca, and thanks for the answer, Nomkita. But I do want to go to Paul and pose a similar question to you, Paul, as I did to Johnny about what happens now. We are where we are with the pandemic. From a fundraising perspective, just like Wendy will not want us to start misbehaving as the public, you may very well still want fundraisers to continue being committed. If indeed I'm considering sending some funds your way, what am I likely to be funding going forward?
So, Andile, thank you for the question, and it's a very relevant question. As I think Johnny referred to, we have a bit of a war chest of unallocated projects or for unallocated projects, and we need to monitor very closely what happens with the pandemic and the fallout of the pandemic. And I think as referred to earlier on, there's been a series of engagements, a significant series of engagements with our big donors. And the feedback from all of that has been obviously overwhelmingly positive, including a number of them, suggesting that they would very much want the fund to continue in its current form, and that they would support it in whatever way is possible, monetarily or otherwise. So I think that our view at the moment is that, once we get a better sort of perspective on what next from a funds focus point of view is, we will then maybe go back and do another fundraising effort, but a very focused fundraising effort. So by way of example, if there's additional support the fund can provide in things like vaccine rollouts, where there's a specific initiative, we're fairly confident, given the support we've got to date and indeed the track record the team's been able to achieve, that we'll have backers and donors. And I would also say, as just a final point, that the fund has got over 305,000 different donors. So it's a big number of donors. A lot of that has come in through the public, and it's through the website or through our crowdfunding platforms. And that money still comes in, and there's still a need, and there always will be a need, and there's a home for that money. So, if you're wishing to donate more, you shouldn't hold back, is, I suppose, my underlying message. And we'll send you an invoice. No, I'm joking.
Brilliant stuff, Paul. I do not see any further questions coming through from my media colleagues. It is 12 minutes to 12, so it feels like the right time perhaps to wrap things up. And before I give the final kind of action items from my media colleagues, Chairperson Gloria Serobe, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself, because I would like you to say some closing and final words as we look forward to the next update from you guys and the hard work that you're doing. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Andile. Mine is really to thank the people who came to listen to us. It's very important that we do give this feedback as frequently as possible and give the information, and rather we should flood people with information. And we get our questions and answers and all that kind of thing after that. We really appreciate the attendance and the time, and your time, Andile, and the rest of the panelists. We will be coming back here under Wendy's instruction, I think, and we're quite ready and willing to do so. But thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And just to emphasize again, thank you for trusting us with your money. And it is in our interest that we keep coming back and say, this is how we have used it. Our biggest performance is when we have run out of money, because we are not fund managers. We were given money to do something, and we need to come back and report, this is what we've done with it. And thank you very much for listening to us.
No, thank you guys on behalf of everybody that's on this call and will watch this recording, thanks to all of you guys for putting your shoulder to the wheel. We are inundated with bad news, unfortunately, in our country, and most of it is around malfeasance. So to see a team of professionals and committed professionals from all walks of life do something so unselfish for all of us, we really appreciate your time and commitment. Let the Solidarity Fund be that beacon of hope, right? Be that lighthouse to remind us that it is indeed possible for us to run things properly as we should. For my media colleagues, let me remind you, you got your media release coming to you. It'll be sent to you straight after this session. So please look out for that. It's got all the information that was shared today. And also, if you're looking for any interviews, please email us at media@solidarityfund.co.za, media@solidarityfund.co.za. You will get your media requests responded over there. Any further information, the website is the best place to be, www.solidarityfund.co.za. From me as your host, I've get the feeling that I'm going to get the same instruction that the chairperson refers to from Wendy. I'm pretty sure I'll see you soon when we have the next
we're doing a podcast together.
There we go, more stuff to come.
There we go.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you very much for joining.
I've committed you on national television, so
thank you, Wendy. Cheers, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.